The Ides of March, 44 BC. Julius Caesar lies bleeding on the Senate floor. 23 stab wounds. Rome erupts. The Republic, built over 5 centuries, is dying. And somewhere in the chaos, an 18-year-old boy in Macedonia receives a letter that will change the world. His name is Octavian. History will call him Augustus. He will become the most powerful man who ever lived. Gaius Octavius Thurinus was born on the 23rd of September 63 BC, in the Oxheads district of Rome, a neighborhood of middle-class respectability, not aristocratic grandeur. His father, Gaius Octavius, was a Roman magistrate of modest standing. His mother, Attia, was the niece of Julius Caesar. That bloodline, thin as it seemed, would become the axis around which history turned. As a child, Octavian was frail, plagued by illness throughout his life. Ancient sources describe a boy prone to fevers, chest complaints, and a constitution that seemed wholly unsuited to the brutal arena of Roman politics. And yet he possessed something no physician could prescribe: an extraordinary mind. Cold, calculating, patient beyond his years. Caesar noticed. He always noticed. When Caesar's will was read aloud in Rome in the spring of 44 BC, the city went silent. Octavian, barely 18, studying rhetoric in Apollonia, was named Caesar's primary heir and adopted son posthumously. He inherited 3/4 of Caesar's enormous estate. He also inherited something far more dangerous: Caesar's name. His great-uncle's veterans, his political debts, and his enemies. All of them now belonged to Octavian. Historians have debated what Caesar truly intended. Did he see in this sickly boy a political instrument, a safeguarded legacy? Or did he perceive beneath the pale exterior a will of iron? We cannot know for certain. What we know is this: Octavian accepted. He crossed from Apollonia to Brundisium by ship, stepping onto Italian soil as Gaius Julius Caesar Octavianus. He was ready. He had a clear, bright look in his eyes, in which he liked to think there was a kind of divine power, and it greatly pleased him whenever anyone at whom he looked keenly dropped his head, as though dazzled by the sun. Rome in 44 BC was a city of predators. Mark Antony, Caesar's most trusted general, battle-hardened and charismatic, had expected to inherit the great man's power. He despised this teenage upstart immediately. Cicero, the greatest orator Rome had ever produced, initially viewed young Octavian as a tool, someone to be used against Antony, and then discarded. He called him the boy, with aristocratic contempt. Octavian observed them both. He played them against each other with a precision that would have impressed a master strategist twice his age. He raised private legions of Caesar's veterans, a legally dubious act that demonstrated from the very beginning his willingness to bend Rome's rules to serve his ambitions. Then came the formation of the Second Triumvirate in October 43 BC, Octavian, Antony, and the general Lepidus, a three-headed alliance built on mutual necessity and mutual distrust. Together they issued the prescriptions, lists of enemies to be hunted and killed. Cicero's name appeared. His severed head and hands were displayed in the forum. The alliance unraveled over time, as all such arrangements built on ambition inevitably must. Lepidus was sidelined and stripped of power. Antony drifted east, to Egypt, to Cleopatra, to a life that Romans viewed with a mixture of fascination and horror. Octavian portrayed him brilliantly, not as a political rival, but as a Roman seduced by a foreign queen, a man who had abandoned his homeland for the perfumed courts of Alexandria. In 31 BC, war came to its final chapter at Actium, a bay off the coast of northwestern Greece. The Battle of Actium on the 2nd of September 31 BC was not merely a military engagement. It was the decisive moment that determined whether Rome would be led by a man rooted in Roman tradition, or drawn into the orbit of Hellenistic monarchy. Octavian's Admiral Agrippa, arguably Rome's greatest naval commander, deployed his warships with mechanical precision. Antony's fleet, larger and heavier, struggled to maneuver. When Cleopatra's squadron broke from the battle and sailed south, Antony followed. His fleet surrendered. His army deserted. Within a year, both Antony and Cleopatra were dead. I found Rome a city of bricks, and left it a city of marble. On the 16th of January, 27 BC, something extraordinary happened in the Roman Senate. Octavian staged a performance of theatrical genius. He announced he was returning all power to the Senate and the Roman people. He was resigning. The Senate, stunned, terrified, entirely aware of the legions at his back, begged him to stay. They granted him sweeping powers over the provinces where Rome's armies were stationed. They gave him the title Augustus, meaning the revered one, the sacred one, a word with deep religious resonance that no Roman had ever borne before. He was not called king. He was not called dictator. He was princeps, the first citizen. The republic in name survived. In reality, Rome had just become an empire. And Augustus understood something that Caesar had not. The Romans would accept absolute power, as long as no one called it that. His psychological genius lay not in conquest but in packaging. He was the careful curator of a fiction so brilliantly maintained that it endured for centuries. We know what Augustus looked like. More than 200 portrait sculptures of him survive. The largest corpus of ancient portraiture ever created for a single individual. They tell a story of calculated image management that would not feel foreign in the age of modern media. The famous Prima Porta statue, discovered in 1863 in the Villa of Livia near Rome, shows Augustus as a general, right arm outstretched, commanding. He is depicted barefoot, which in Roman art signified divinity. He is young, perhaps 35, though the statue was likely made when he was in his 60s. The face, smooth, unlined, the cheekbones high and defined. The eyes carry a quality that ancient sources described as luminous and penetrating. Scholars have used these sculptures alongside ancient physical descriptions to reconstruct his face with considerable confidence. He was approximately 1.7 meters tall, average for a Roman. His hair was golden brown, slightly curling. His skin, by Roman standards, was lighter than expected. He had a gap in his upper front teeth. He was, by all accounts, not physically imposing. But when he entered a room, every account agrees, the room changed. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, began with Augustus and lasted, in its purest form, for over 2 centuries. Under his 41-year reign as princeps, Rome was transformed with a thoroughness no ruler before or since has achieved in comparable time. He reorganized the army into a professional standing force of 28 legions, approximately 150,000 soldiers, stationed permanently on the frontiers. He created Rome's first police force, the Vigiles. He established a permanent fire brigade. He reorganized the grain supply that fed a city of perhaps 1 million people. He reformed the tax system. He built roads, aqueducts, temples, and theaters throughout the empire. He claimed to have restored 82 temples in a single year. The ancient biographer Suetonius records that he rebuilt or beautified more structures than any other ruler in Roman history. Poets flourished under his patronage. Virgil wrote the Aeneid, Rome's national epic, under Augustus's encouragement. Horace, Livy, Ovid. The Augustan age became synonymous with Latin literature's golden peak. Daily life in Augustan Rome was richer, safer, and more stable than it had been in living memory. Roman citizens could walk the streets of a city that felt, for the first time in a generation, like peace. From a fractured republic scarred by civil war, Augustus shaped an empire of staggering scale. Watch as territory, population, and monumental construction expanded across his reign. The numbers tell the story of a civilization reborn. Power always has its shadow. Augustus endured profound private grief behind the marble facade of imperial serenity. His only child, Julia, was exiled by his own decree in 2 BC. Her conduct, he declared, had shamed the moral standards he had legislated for all of Rome. The irony was devastating. and ancient sources do not miss it. His chosen successors died before him: his nephew Marcellus, his grandsons Gaius and Lucius. He watched the men he groomed for succession fall one by one. His wife Livia, intelligent, politically astute and powerful in ways that still divide historians, outlived him and remained a force in Roman politics for decades. Was she his partner, his manipulator? The ancient sources are divided, and often hostile. The truth, like so much of Augustus, resists simple answers. In his final hours in August of 14 AD, at the age of 75, Augustus is reported to have asked those around him whether he had played his part well in the comedy of life. It was a remarkable question for a man who had remade the world. He died at Nola in Campania, in the same room where his father had died decades before. As if, at the end, he simply wanted to go home. Have I played the part well? Then applaud as I exit. Augustus died on the 19th of August 14 AD. The Senate declared him a god within months. His name, Augustus, became a title carried by every Roman emperor after him for 5 centuries, and then adopted by the Holy Roman Emperors, and echoed in the titles of Russian Tsars and German Kaisers, all of whom derived their very word for ruler from one name: Caesar. He had taken a republic fractured by a century of civil war, and given it 2 centuries of relative peace. He had built the administrative, legal and military framework that would govern the Western world for 400 years. He had done it through patience, intelligence, political genius, and, when necessary, ruthless, unflinching violence. Was he a liberator or a tyrant? A restorer or a destroyer? He was, perhaps, simply Rome's necessary man. The city he left behind was unrecognizable from the one he had inherited. And standing here now, looking out across the Forum, the temples, the arches, the aqueducts, still standing after 2,000 years, we feel the weight of what one extraordinary human being, driven by grief and ambition, and something close to genius, was able to build. Rome began as a city. Under Augustus, it became an idea, and ideas, as he understood better than anyone, can last forever.